Alrighty, so DST streaming options for week 9. So far on the season, we have a pretty good strike rate. I'd say we're hitting about 75 to 80%. So there are going to be our misses, there are going to be our massive hits, and so far, like I said, on the season, we are doing very, very well. If you guys were looking for like the quick answers, that's why I have the timestamps in here. If that's what you guys are wanting, then you can just go quick, and see the matchups, hear the 5-second soundbite, and move on to the next. If that's really what you want, though, then a lot of these videos I probably make probably aren't your favorite thing in the whole wide world, because my content is really based off of film, based off of stats. And then for these DST projections, like I am actually making real projections based on the stats: yards, points, yards allowed, points allowed, sacks, sacks allowed, interceptions, interceptions thrown, and then I come up with my own projections for the end of the week. It is the reason why I've been so successful this season. So if you're in a league that actually streams DST, I would consider watching the entire video, because there are going to be times where you're like, oh, this guy's crazy. But if you listen to my explanation and like how I'm viewing things, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, it will make a lot of sense. I'm not just like, oh, what did somebody else out there say? These are a little bit more based in reality. Super long intro, but I am super excited for this week. There are some like really nice juicy matchups that I think are worth exploiting. I'll tell you my favorite couple at the end, as I always do. So the first matchup I am looking at is the Rams versus the Saints. Without Spencer Rattler, I am like even more looking forward to this matchup. I think Tyler Shuck is overrated. Don't think he's that great. We are at the point in time in the season where the Saints are about to go into like super tank mode. It wouldn't surprise me if they sell off Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed. Obviously, I think Alvin Kamara is kind of stuck just based on the contract and based on what he's already said out there in the public. This team's about ready to go into tank mode. Tyler Shuck is not that great. I've watched the tape. I didn't like what I saw this week. I didn't like what I saw in college. I don't think he's that amazing. The Saints offense as a whole is pretty bad. The Rams defense as a whole is pretty great. They are getting a lot of sacks. They just recently added a good younger corner from the Titans in a very like crazy trade as far as I'm concerned. I think the Rams are making money moves to try and shore up their secondary and add some more depth and talent, and I think you are going to see that on display this week against the New Orleans Saints. I think the Rams are going to be able to get there and be a high-end DST streaming option that are readily available in pretty much every single league. I want to say they're like 13% roster on Sleeper, so like they are out there. I definitely think they are worth streaming in week 9. The next matchup that I think is actually like surprisingly like underneath the rug juicy is the Detroit Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings in week 9. We know for a fact there is no Carson Wentz. We know for a fact that Kevin O'Connell is calling some of the worst games I've seen called by him in the entire time he's been coaching. They obviously are coming off a bye week, which is fantastic for the Lions. They are going to be at full health and full strength, or as much as they can be. Obviously, some people are injured. They are going to have as many players out there on offense and defense as they can possibly have. They played with speed, aggression, and they were just out there like hitting people in week 7. I think you're going to see Dan Campbell's defense, this Lions defense, come out and slap this Vikings offense in the mouth repeatedly throughout this football game. It should set up where the Vikings, like, what are they going to do? They're going to roll out JJ McCarthy. Like, do you remember JJ McCarthy playing against the Bears in week 1? And I can't remember who even played in week 2. It doesn't even matter. JJ McCarthy does not look like it's going to be him. Like, he does not look like he's the guy. Because if he was, Carson Wentz wouldn't have been out there in week 8 with a torn labrum or whatever else was going on and throwing the football. I do think you're going to see the Lions absolutely pop off. They are getting sacks. They are getting interceptions. The Vikings are allowing sacks. They are throwing interceptions regardless of who's out there. I think that this game is super, super juicy, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a very few people out there on the internet who are actually talking about it. I think the Lions are set up to smash the Vikings in week 9. Also, just so you guys know, I look at more matchups than just the ones I talk about. I usually range anywhere from like 7 to 10 matchups that I'm reviewing on the week. I don't want to do every single one and like break them all down, because it's like some of these just aren't that great for DST streaming, and I'm trying to find you like the top 4, top 5, top 6 depending on the matchups that week that I think are like viable streaming options. So with that being said, the next matchup that I am looking at is the Packers going up against the Panthers. I do think the Packers defense is kind of like doing like the miniature roller coaster, but they looked a lot better in week 8. I think that translates over to week 9. I think you have Micah Parsons looking like he's pretty healthy out there, getting going, getting some sacks. The Panthers offense, I don't know what Dave Canales is doing either. He's like Kevin O'Connell. He's calling horrible play calls. He's out there calling horrible game plans. Like his scheme is bad. Doesn't matter if it's Andy Dalton. If it's Bryce Young, yeah, like maybe it's a little bit of an elevation, but if it's Andy Dalton, I don't think you're going to see a huge change from week 8 to week 9 in the performance of the Panthers. When it comes to the Panthers as well, they're not scoring too many points. They're getting okay yardage. They're allowing a decent chunk of sacks. The Packers are getting a decent chunk of sacks. The Packers secondary isn't that great, so I wouldn't anticipate like an interception or like anything too crazy like that, like a pick six. But then again, Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, they're going to throw the ball up there a couple of times, and who knows, even this lackluster secondary for the Packers could get there and help them just like elevate their potential scoring in week 9 for the DST streaming spot. I think it is a great matchup to exploit. I think the Panthers are just like, kind of just making it through life right now. So if it's Andy Dalton, smash. Bryce Young, still pretty good matchup for Green Bay in week 9. The next matchup that I'm looking at, and it's not my absolute favorite on the week, only because of the fact that like Jaden Daniels can be Jaden Daniels. Any given week, he plays the entire game. It is Seattle going up against the Commanders. I was surprised at how many people dropped Seattle, considering that their defense on the season looks like a top 10 defense in the real NFL, and they have been a pretty good DST streaming option as well. They're getting interceptions, they're getting sacks. The Commanders, unfortunately for them, are allowing a decent amount of sacks as well. I don't think Laramie Tunsil is going to play in week 9, so that left tackle position is going to be a big exploitable thing for this big front four for Seattle. There's always a potential, even with Marcus Mariota, that they can score some points, move the football down the field, especially passing the football. But the one thing I know about Seattle is they are not letting you run the football. It is not happening any given week. That means that JCM is not going to be able to get it going. McNichols, Rodriguez, whether it's Jaden, Mariota, they're not going to be able to run the football on this front four. It sets them up where they can drop more guys in coverage. This game is going to end up probably being a lower scoring game for the Commanders. Even though I know I just said like it could be higher scoring any given week, I don't think Seattle is going to allow the Commanders to get there. If they are out there in your league, I think that this matchup is a decent enough to good matchup to stream them again in week 9. And they are a DST that if they're out there in your league because somebody dropped them because they were on bye or because they didn't want to have them, great. Go pick them up and hold on to them for dear life, because I think they will end up being a probably top 5, top 6 DST option on the season. Kind of like I called out the Patriots in like week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. They've been the exact same thing. I think they're a great viable streaming option in week 9, and they are a great option going forward. The next matchup I'm looking at is the Chargers versus the Titans. At this point in time, like any team, I've said this before, any team who's playing the Titans is going to give you at least a okay chunk of points. We saw with the Colts in week 8, it was kind of a disappointment. They only gave us like 7 points on Sleeper. I do think the Chargers defense like went through like this weird lull. Beginning of the season, they were like top 5, top 10. A couple weeks later, they were like bottom 5, bottom 10, especially in rush yards allowed. But at this point in time, they are starting to screen back and kind of re-emerging as like at least worst case scenario, a middling defense in the NFL. The Titans, like I said at the very beginning, are allowing the most points to each DST that they're playing week over week over week. That is the reason why any team you see playing them is projected to have the most points or almost the most points any given week. It is going to set up where the Chargers should easily finish as like a top 2, top 3 option in DST for week 9. So for the last matchup, and I swear like every week I have like a spicy one, and it's like, some weeks it absolutely hits and some weeks it is a complete miss. So this is one of those like pick up at your own peril and like go with your gut. If you think this is the week that the spicy pick hits and pops off as like a top 2, top 3 option, smash. If you don't think so, avoid and fade. It is the Jags going up against the Raiders. Unfortunately for Geno Smith and this Raiders offense, it has looked abysmal. This Jags defense has a front four that's not slouches. They're not going to let Ashton Genty run efficiently. They're going to set it up where you're going to have Geno Smith in a blender. They are top 2 or top 3. They might be like number 1. I could be completely wrong, but I think they're top 2. I think they're second in interceptions on the season. They are absolutely smashing. They are not getting a lot of sacks, but the good news for them is the offensive line for the Raiders isn't great. Geno Smith is taking sacks, throwing interceptions. They could have a pick 6 in this game. If that ends up happening, throw it out the window. They are going to like absolutely demolish for DST. And the other thing too that makes it a little more spicy is the fact that the Raiders are coming off a bye. And I said this earlier in the season and I was right. So this is why it's kind of like you could play them, but you might want to fade them. The reason why I don't like streaming defenses against like teams that are coming off a bye is 1, they're going to be more rested and healthy. 2, they are going to have a game plan on how to try and score points and exploit the defense for the Jags. They know the Jags aren't going to let you run the football too much, but they can be passed on. I do think that if Geno Smith plays a good game to a decent game, the Jags are probably like a 5 point to 2 point DST in week 9. But on the flip side, it could end up being one of the highest scoring DSTs on the week just because of how bad the Raiders have played. So like I said, they're a spicy pickup this week. Play at your own peril, start at your own peril. So my two favorite matchups on the week is the LA Chargers going up against the Titans. Titans are literally the easiest team to stream against because their offense is horrible. Cam Ward's not that great. The run game's bad. The whole team's bad. My favorite matchup right there, slightly above the Chargers, is the Rams going up against Saints. Tyler Shuck's not great. The offense for the Saints isn't great. They don't score points. They are allowing sacks. They are throwing interceptions. The Rams made a trade to improve their secondary. The Rams are getting a lot of sacks. I think they're number 2 or number 3 in the NFL in sacks right now. I think they're number 2 behind the Denver Broncos. They are popping off out there on defense. They're not letting you score points. They're not letting you move the football on the field. It all sets up where the Rams should be or could be one of the best options to stream and probably one of the best options for a DST to actually have in week 9. Hopefully this video helps you just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. If you guys are in deeper leagues, and I really am talking about deeper leagues, I know the waiver wire sucks. I know I keep on seeing posts on Twitter and TikTok this is the best waiver wire ever. It's not. It's really not that great. We're at the point in time where you are trying to find people who could just potentially be viable in the back half of the season. If you are in a position where you are looking especially for running backs and wide receivers who are not going to be overly rostered, or at least the majority of them won't be overly rostered in your deeper leagues, I would highly recommend you go check out my video. It'll be down here, up here, somewhere on the actual screen. If you are in that position and you are looking to pick up somebody who could be viable in the back half of the season, which is pretty much the best you can hope for at this point in time going into week 9. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.